The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Very interesting news out of California's 25th district. So we covered on the bonus show when Democratic Congresswoman Katie Hill announced that she would be resigning. She wasn't involved in a Me Too moment, but she was involved in a relationship with a staffer that violates House rules, and she decided that she was going to resign. And this very quickly became a race of interest in the progressive media space because Young Turks founder and host Cenk Uygur announced he would be running as a Democrat for that seat. He has had a number of different campaign events. I know people who have been to them, and it's an interesting crowd. There's already a sort of more establishment Democrat running that has a lot of the important endorsements in the region. But at the same time, Cenk's media notoriety has been allowing him to raise a whole bunch of money. It's also, interestingly, a jungle primary, which means that the primary is all of the Democrats and Republicans. Everybody who's running is on the same primary. And the top two vote getters make the final ballot in November, which means that you could have two Democrats on the final ballot, two Republicans, one of each, whatever. The latest news is that former Trump campaign aide, George Papadopoulos, is now going to be running in this race as well, of course, as a Republican. And he says he's been living there for more than a year and a half, which is weird because that's not very long, actually, to show up somewhere and to start running. That it's a state with potential, but the governing apparatus and the party in the state have driven it directly to the ground. And he says that he is the person to represent the district. Apparently, he's been testing this for months, and he finally filed paperwork with the Federal Elections Commission back in October. And of course, he was a key figure in the Trump-Russia probe. And I'll be perfectly frank with you, Pat. At first glance, this seems completely cuckoo and bonkers. But this district, from what I'm learning, is not typically a blue district, that it was a big deal for Katie Hill to win the district, and that with the number of people that are running and the attention that the race has gotten, really could be anybody's game. Not that I expect Papadopoulos to win, but he could do better than we think.
Yeah, there's so much interest in this district now, which is funny in a sense because most of the time, whenever you have a congressional election, whoever is the incumbent just goes unchallenged, right?
Yes.
I mean, maybe they have a primary challenger, maybe they have a challenger from the other party, but typically they just skate through and they get reelected. But with this seat opening up, there seems to be a tremendous amount of interest in it. And we have a establishment Republican, we have an establishment Democrat, we have Cenk Uygur, we have George Papadopoulos. Everyone and their mother is running for this seat. And it's also funny how normally someone who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI just a couple of years ago and was implicated in an investigation that implicated the president and was just major news all across the country. that should totally disqualify someone.
Right.
But for whatever reason, among Republicans and among Trumpists, that emboldened someone like George Papadopoulos to run for the seat.
One of the things that a friend of mine who went to one of Cenk's first events in the district, one of the things that he told me was that there were a lot of people who showed up to protest Cenk. I'm not making it seem like most people were protesters. Most people were supporters, to be clear, but there were people that showed up to protest Cenk who support the sort of establishment Democrat. And their refrain that they kept mentioning was Cenk doesn't even live in this district. And now the thing that's interesting about that is it's relatively common for members of Congress not to live in the district, in the sense that you don't need to live in the district that you're trying to represent for the House of Representatives. You need to live in the state, but not the district. Now, typically, the candidates are close, but they don't always live in the district. And that's something that was being repeated a lot. And I don't know if it's a coordinated line from the establishment Democrat against Cenk, but it's interesting that it kept coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an advantage to live in the district, but it doesn't have to be that you have to be from that district or you have to currently live in that district. I think it does help, though. It's funny how we commented that George Papadopoulos, he's only been in the district for a year and a half. Well, that's longer than Cenk has been living there for. But I think regardless, the most important thing is policy, what your positions are. You can learn about a district. You can learn what the needs are and what the industries are there and meet the people there.
People have been asking me, what do I think is going to happen? I really have no idea. I mean, I was talking to, again, a bunch of people who live in LA, not necessarily in the district, and everybody is saying, on the one hand, the establishment Democrat has all the important endorsements other than, like, I guess Ro Khanna endorsed Cenk, which is, Ro Khanna is a relatively big name and becoming a more and more well-known member of the House, but is from Northern California. It's unclear how much that does for Cenk. So on the one hand, there's the people who say, yeah, the establishment Democrat's going to take it. Then you've got the people who say, it was a notable thing that a Democrat won at all. And so there's the contingent that thinks the district will go back to a Republican because the Democrat resigned in what, even if there was nothing illegal done, it was not exactly the most glamorous resignation. And then there's the people who say, oh, Cenk and his celebrity and his fundraising are going to blow this out of the water and he's going to take it. I have no clue. I don't think there's any polling yet, at least not that I've seen. Anything could happen.
Yeah, do you think Cenk would do more for the progressive movement as a congressman or staying where he is now at the Young Turks, continuing to grow that operation? I mean, I honestly don't know. I would imagine that him going to Congress and giving these very viral speeches on the House floor and sitting on panels and grilling people that are coming up there to testify before Congress, like maybe bankers or Trump administration officials, whoever. I think that Cenk would handle that role really well, and I think that maybe people watching that, people taking a look at those videos that surface from congressional testimonies or speeches or whatever, that could actually push the progressive movement forward too.
Yeah,
so I honestly don't know.
I actually think that at this point, Cenk could have a bigger impact. Freudian slip. Geez, Cenk could have a bigger impact in Congress because the Young Turks is big enough now where Cenk's obviously an important player there and he's the most well-known guy and the main host of the main show. I totally get that. But the organization is bigger now that even if Cenk leaves, there are so many other hosts and programs and producers and whatnot that the impact of the Young Turks may not drastically be reduced if Cenk leaves, but Cenk understanding how to work the media and work viral videos and all of this from Congress could actually give him a much bigger impact that's where my head is as of right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just so you know, David, as I guess you do already know, every single congressional seat is up for re-election every 2 years. So you have a shot to join the likes of Cenk and maybe run for Congress yourself. You could be a congressman by 2021 if you want to, if that's something that you put your dreams towards.
I have alluded to this on streams. I have been approached about running here in Massachusetts in a particular seat, which I am not going to say which one it is. But I don't have anything to announce at this point in time. And quite frankly, it seems like a nightmare, the amount of oversight day after day after day, 14 hours of campaigning and all this different stuff. I don't know. It's not seeming like the most appealing thing to me, but I have been approached. I will admit to that.
I mean, I could be your campaign manager if you want. You'd probably want someone more experienced and more skilled at it. But I think I would do a halfway decent job.
I think a lot of the tasks from the David Pakman Show would translate very, very directly, in fact. Let's talk about Daniel Schreiber, who's the CEO of a small insurance company called Lemonade. Daniel Schreiber received a very strongly worded letter from lawyers at T-Mobile recently. And he said that it seemed very difficult to believe, but he was accused of Lemonade stealing the trademark of T-Mobile. And the question was, well, did they steal the logo? Did they steal the tagline? What was it? And what it happens to be is a color. There is a color called Pantone Rhodamine Red U. Colloquially, you might know this color as a shade of magenta. And that is T-Mobile's signature color, which they have a trademark on. And this is the same color that Lemonade uses in a lot of its branding. Now, Schreiber says it's not magenta, it's pink. T-Mobile is saying, no, it's our magenta and you can't use it. And this is an interesting case that is potentially going to test the limits of what can you trademark. This is not the first time that we've seen these color-based legal disputes. 5 years ago, T-Mobile sued AT&T for a shade of plum that was similar to the magenta shade that T-Mobile used. And T-Mobile has done this to other companies. They went after a smartwatch maker. They went after a British IT firm. And they are insisting that this is something that is theirs and theirs alone. Can you trademark a color? That is the question here, which is legally at stake.
Yeah, and before I give my take, I should probably disclose that I don't have a background in patent law.
Yes.
I'm not an intellectual property expert here, but what I think about this is that if it was like another phone plan, if it was another carrier coming up, and they wanted to use the same color as T-Mobile, they wanted to use that magenta, I could understand T-Mobile's case because, well, this is another phone plan. They're a direct competitor. They're using the same color. That's a little bit confusing. This company, Lemonade, they're a small insurance company. They have nothing whatsoever to do with T-Mobile. And so for T-Mobile to say that we have a claim on this color that's actually a pretty common color. I mean, magenta's it's not the most common color, but it's out there. It's one of the most prominent colors, I would say, and then in the top like 30. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair for T-Mobile to do that.
Far be it for me to be here defending stronger intellectual property rights for big corporations, but I do think you make a good point, which is if it is a use of a color that when combined with the service or product that's being sold could cause confusion between one company and another company, like another mobile phone carrier using the same color, I think it's a stronger case than when it's just an insurance company. I think that is a good point. Now, there is some precedent for this. There is all the way back to the 1980s. There's this company called Owens Corning, and they make that pink fiberglass insulation for houses, which is increasingly not used. Now there's other types of insulation that are being used, but for a long time, that was the default. They claimed rights to the color of the pink fiberglass insulation, which is very similar to the color of the Pink Panther cartoon, which featured prominently in their commercials. And there are some other examples of this as well. And what Owens Corning was able to do is prove that the brand was linked to the color in people's minds. And on that basis, they were granted a trademark, which completely reversed like a century of legal precedent. So there is a history of this, and I have no idea what will happen in this case.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a crazy move by T-Mobile, but it's not as crazy as what Ohio State tried to do a few weeks ago. We covered this on the bonus show, how they tried to trademark the word "the."
Yes.
And I think it's maybe the most common word in the English dictionary. So that wouldn't have gone so well. And in fact, it didn't. I think that was turned down.
Let's talk about animal cruelty and let's talk about the president. So this morning and last night, I guess, there were a lot of headlines saying Trump signs animal cruelty bill into law. And immediately a lot of praise was heaped onto Donald Trump. This is particularly in contrast to the very strange appearance Donald Trump had in the White House with a dog, as we talked about earlier today in the broadcast show. And I have actually sought things for which I can praise Donald Trump. And when I found them, I have praised him for them. They are few and far between, but there are certain things that Donald Trump has done. I think that the headlines, Trump signs animal cruelty bill into law, don't really represent the core of this issue. Because really what happened here is that Republicans and Democrats, both parties made up mostly of people who are against animal cruelty, put together a bipartisan bill called the Prevent Animal Cruelty and Torture Act, also called the PACT Act, which outlaws any purposeful crushing, burning, drowning, suffocation, impalement, or bodily injury of other kinds to animals, makes it felony charges. If you do that, you can suffer both fines and up to 7 years in prison. Democrats and Republicans both put this bill together. And then, as happens with bills, it just goes to the president and they sign it into law or they don't. So the idea here of the headline is Trump signs animal cruelty bill into law. It's sort of like Trump decided not to get in the way of this bill, and there's no reason whatsoever to get in the way of this bill. Is it really something Trump did that he should be praised for? Like, it would be weird if he didn't sign it into law, but like with many bills that get sent to him, he just didn't stand in the way. It's really the work of Congress.
Yeah, this is just a layup for him. I mean, I would understand if this bill barely passed Congress and Trump had to buck members of his own party to sign this bill. Then you could give him some credit because it's like, wow, he actually spent some political capital on getting this done and he did the right thing here. There's none of that with this. It just seems like a straightforward thing to do. And it's the right thing to do, of course. I don't know. I mean, how effective is it going to be, though? Like, I would imagine that pretty much every state in the union, if not every state in the union, has laws against animal cruelty and animal abuse. Just making it a federal crime, I'm not entirely sure that's gonna do much.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I read, there are important reasons to do this, but there is also like a grandstanding element to it for sure. So yeah, I mean, when you step back, everybody basically agrees it's really bad to be mean to puppies, which at some point, if we want to dial this down, that's what this is about. States, for the most part, now it is true, Pat, that there are states where the law is not nearly as strict as this federal law. So there it will make more of a difference. But it is a complete and total layup. And that's fine. This is still the right thing to do. It's great. But the idea that Trump did something heroic here is hard to swallow for me.
And this is coming off the heels of a bill passed in 2010 called the Animal Crush Video Prohibition Act.
Yes.
Apparently, there was this big phenomena of women filming these crushing videos where they would put on high heels and step on like small animals, and those videos would go viral.
Right.
So Congress had to step into the action. They did the right thing back in 2010 and banned those videos, banned the types of abuse that was pushed in those videos.
Sure.
And I mean, I tried to do some research onto this. I tried to look up some of those videos and I couldn't find them. That's what I spent my entire morning doing.
Yeah, and that bill actually led to Pat becoming very closely acquainted with the process of bleaching your hard drive, as Donald Trump has spoken about before. Pat now very, very familiar with that process. And of course, no evidence of wrongdoing will be found if anybody were to look through his computer, which I think is good news, Pat, for everybody involved on this front.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. I mean, I wasn't able to get too much work done this morning, but at least I thoroughly researched if that's still going on, if you can still find those videos, and I wasn't able to come up with
You weren't
much.
able to find any evidence of that. Absolutely right. So there it is. Let me know, how much praise does Trump deserve for this? I think it's very, very little. Listen, to the extent that we question whether Trump had any empathy whatsoever for animals, I guess we can praise him for not going out of his way to block the animal cruelty prevention bill. But beyond that, I don't think we need to say too much more about it. Go ahead, Pat.
I was just thinking back to that video he did with the bald eagle.
Yeah.
If anything, I think the bald eagle was almost abusive towards Trump. I don't think Trump was really at risk of hurting that thing. That's for sure.
No, certainly not. Tomorrow, on the video version of the bonus show, I will face off against Pat in chess. But don't worry, we heard your views, and people who listen to the bonus show said we don't need that on the audio version. So we will not be having that on the audio version. It will be on the video version of the bonus show. That's coming up on tomorrow's bonus show after tomorrow's brand new Wednesday show, which will be sort of like a Friday show, but on a Wednesday.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.